Daddy eats law. Daddy eats law. Smart, smart, smart.
Hello and welcome to Daddy Eats Last, where we discuss the challenges of being a man in modern society and whatever the hell that even means. I'm Kane, and joining me today to chat man stuff are Ryan and Matty. Firstly, gents, how's the weekend?
Good, mate. Really nice. I made it to 8 a.m. yoga this Saturday because I wasn't hungover as anything on Saturday morning. So that was nice.
The joys of being child-free. So how does 8 a.m. yoga work? Like, what's the turnout like?
It's actually really small. I found this $10 a session in South Bank, which is sort of Melbourne CBD Central, which is about half the price of everywhere else. It's at a community centre, and yeah, there's like 8 people that turn up, and it's a good reason to actually get out of bed, because I came back and TK was still in bed, so she got coffee in bed at 9:30 and everything like that. But it gets your day going, which is good. As you said, I don't have, whinging mouths or crying children to deal with on a Saturday morning. So
Mate,
it's easy.
Make the most of it while you can. How long have you been doing the yoga
That's what
for?
everyone says. Only a month. I've gotten back into it because few injuries with sport, and I did it a couple of years ago and had like an injury-free season. So I thought I'll get back into it. And
you play hockey, yeah?
Get amongst it. Yeah, so hockey on the weekends, obstacle racing throughout the year, and then indoor cricket throughout the year as well. So yeah, sort of lapping up the fact that there's no kids whilst I can do a heap of sport.
Well, I can imagine the yoga, being that active, the yoga would help. And then obviously having a pretty busy work life as well. The yoga helps kind of keep you centered and things like that, I guess.
Yeah, fair bit of that stuff. I've tried the whole meditation thing this year. That's been working an absolute gem. Yeah, I don't know whether that's really a guy's thing to focus on, but it's
I can actually say I use an app which is called Calm, and I'm 458 days of meditation in a row at the moment. So it's one of those things, like I've got to that, like it's a fairly good streak. I don't really want to break the streak because I don't think I'd ever be able to crack it ever again. That's
a tough streak. I kind of only do it Monday to Friday, but I use Timer, which is probably very similar, but really good application as well. Yeah, the yoga, it's a bit embarrassing because you're kind of there with 60-year-old women that are more flexible than you. So that I don't know whether that says more about them or me, but anyway.
What about you, Matt? Any yoga in your weekend?
No peaceful yoga for me this weekend. A little bit different up here in Brisbane. We are up to week, I think maybe 15 or 16 building a cubby house. So this weekend we got the front wall on, or the fourth wall completed. So we're at the roofing stage now, which is nice to be at after the longness that has been this little project.
How does one go about starting a cubby? Do you have to draw up plans? Do you Google plans these days? Do you just watch videos online? Do you have to get a planning permit? How does a cubby work? Because I have no idea about how to build stuff.
There was all of those things, mate. All of those things. We, the dial before you dig, getting the schemes of the backyard to see what I'm actually going to be smashing into. A lot of YouTubing Bunnings videos on, digging and footings and all this kind of stuff. But in the end, yeah, we've managed to sort of put the wooden stumps in and a bit of a deck on top of that. And then the wall started coming up. But that's probably the biggest issue I have in these little projects, is working out where to start. Whatever project you sort of take on, the biggest, I guess, the fear for me is stuffing up the first bit, and the rest of it just sort of ends up looking like a mishmash of, wrongness. So a few calls to the old man. He's pretty handy with that kind of stuff, just to, what to do. In the end, he actually came up from Melbourne on the way through to another trip. But and he started the footings for me. So I can't really take credit for the whole project. But
because you're in Queensland, your dad's in Melbourne. He came up on the way to another holiday. Came up to assist you in building a cubby house.
He did, yes. He's one of those guys that you can sort of, give a pocket knife and a bundle of matches, and he'll build you like a shopping center or something like that. He's pretty handy with that kind of thing. So,
do you think that's something of the older, I guess the older generation of males? They built a lot of stuff. Like I know, Ryan, I've seen you build a table. I've seen that online, that you built something. I saw that posted on social media. And Matt, you're building a cubby, but I don't see a lot of dudes these days building stuff. It's sort of a lot of the older generation who that's one of their skill sets. They could build shit.
Absolutely, yeah. I was thinking about that today when I was doing some painting. 10, 20 years ago, most kind of dads would be doing this kind of stuff, building things for their kids, and general maintenance around the house. But I think these days it's less prevalent in society, whereas dads can like outsource this kind of stuff. Do they have the time to even do it? Do they even need to know this kind of stuff anymore? When you can go down to say Bunnings and pick up a Cubby house from there and bang, it's up in half a day. Do they even need to know this kind of stuff? Well, I'm not too sure, but
It'd help to know one end of a hammer from the other end. I know, Ryan, like I said before, you've built tables. I've seen those online. Like you seem pretty handy with it. You've done renovations and stuff like that. You flipped houses.
Firstly, it's probably good to point out that Matt's building a pretty extensive Cubby house. So it's not just slapping something on together.
I've lived in worse places than his Cubby house, I reckon.
I know, so have I. And I think, anywhere that you start off with footings, you're actually doing something pretty serious. I'm building some recycled timber furniture at the moment for our new place. It's really good fun. It's kind of therapeutic, but it's definitely like, compared to the norm, it's very, very different to what I do. And I think probably the older generation, work was very different. Like work is so different now that we're on so many, like my phone runs my life. I've got several computers and I like doing things with my hands. I'm a very, kinesthetic hands type person, but so much of everything that I do for work is computer based. The building stuff is good. That being said, like, as you said, I've done, renovated some apartments and some houses, flipped and that kind of thing. I don't think I would ever tile again. I tiled a kitchen and bathroom, and that was mainly from YouTube videos and also because of a bit of a dare. Like my brother, he's very much a tradie and very good with building stuff. And I'm sort of known as the pretty boy of the family that doesn't really get their hands dirty. So when he said you weren't going to be able to do any of this, I was like, all right, challenge accepted. I tiled a kitchen and bathroom, and so much respect for anyone who does that, because that was an absolute bitch of a job.
It's my dad's a carpenter. I've seen him do tiling at home when I lived at home, and I think it was about 6 or 7 F-bombs per square meter of tiling was the kind of going rate at the time. So it could have even having a crack.
I think I bought double the amount of tiles I needed just because I threw so many of them for therapy. It wasn't funny. But I think today we just like the fact that you can outsource everything so much, and just kind of the world that we're in is you don't really get the joy of building anything more, which is why I guess with our new place, I sort of went, I want to build our bedside tables. And as you said, coffee table and sort of, plus also I'm big in the sustainability factor. So recycled timber and all that, just building it's like a couple of hours without a phone, without technology, and just doing like, human things. It feels like a massive rarity for today to actually do that, because we need everything so quickly. So I think the fact that you're building a Cubby house, Matt, down there with so many weeks is awesome.
Have you found it therapeutic, Matt, like putting it together, like the whole project? Is it a sense of achievement when you get another wall up, or a sense of achievement once you've built the floor, or is it therapeutic doing it?
Yeah, look, it is. Once you do get that wall up, or, you take a step back and have a look and go, oh, okay, great, I made that. There's a bit of a sense of achievement. But before these projects kind of start, I've done a couple now within the house. You think about it and think, oh, do I really want to take on this project? And until you start getting immersed in it, you don't realise, how enjoyable it can be. But saying that, I think, Ryan, this really demonstrates, the difference between sort of kids and no kids. Whereas you enjoy to set aside some time and you find it therapeutic to sort of, make the furniture, which is fantastic. Whereas on the flip side of what we're doing up here is, over a whole weekend, you sort of really got to, knuckle down before the weekend starts. Okay, we've got a 3-4 hour window here. What can we get done? Rush to Bunnings, get what you need, get it done, because, you've got some kids' sports to play, or you've got a kid's birthday party to get to. And that's the frustrating bit, is trying to, schedule in the time to actually get some of the project done. And this is why it's taking, X amount of weeks to complete. Whereas I think if we had no kids or something, we'd be able to knock it up, within a weekend. But then why would you be doing it, I guess?
Trying to fit it in between a busy schedule. When you build anything, or definitely when I build stuff, like when I renovated one of the places, like it was take 2 weeks off work and literally at the place 7 till 7 every day, working away. Now, if I had kids, there's no chance of doing that. But also just even building furniture and that, you're right. You really need to, you can't just go, I'll do half an hour here, I'll do 45 minutes there between, whatever it happens to be, or they're eating lunch or something. To build anything, you need a good couple of hours, which is probably why it's also so hard to do just in today's world, because everything's so fast moving, and sort of, if it's not done, instant gratifications, my generation type stuff, it's really hard to do. Like even, building the furniture, that you lock out 4 hours of just, all right, I'll do this, I'll have a beer, you don't have constant stimulation elsewhere. And trying to add kids into that would be an absolute nightmare, I can imagine.
Yeah, that's the hard bit to even juggle doing anything, like even cleaning up a backyard or something like that, to try to find a couple of hours to pull the weeds out in the middle of what's winter now, but getting towards this sort of springtime, end of winter. Just juggling just general maintenance of things, let alone trying to build a cubby from scratch. It's that constant juggle of being able to do that. I don't know if it was different, again, that sort of generation ago, where there was different roles in inverted commas, where a man in inverted commas would do X and a woman would do Y. Like, I planned, 21 meals a week times 3, 60 odd meals a week, one in advance. Like, just roles are really fluid now, and it's very hard to get the time to sit down or stand up or do something like that. And the few times I've tried to do it with Melamine, even trying to put together just a basic sort of shoe stand, was disastrous. The cutting and the bashing of stuff's really good, but my nana's right. I'm not really that handy, but I have other skills, I guess, which hopefully make up for it in some way.
Well, hopefully, otherwise you probably wouldn't be married. But I think you've probably hit the nail on the head there, in that the time's so crazy. Like even with our kids. So I've been in Sydney for most of this week. Sort of Saturday was a day of, all right, we'll do some washing, we'll clean the apartment, we'll just kind of square, because we had TK's parents over for the week as well. So our house was a bit nuts, and we'll square the apartment up. But thankfully we're in a small apartment. But she's also working the whole time, and that. So the fluid roles and the time factor is huge, in that just doing simple house stuff is like, we'll take half a Saturday to just square the apartment, square the life back up, just simply being away. And then, but I just think it's 10x when you have kids, in terms of like having a fit. Like we're able to quickly do this, do a couple loads of washing, get the week back, get ready for next week's work. Both having some pretty heavy jobs, and sort of quick vacuum of the apartment and clean up. But we've had many conversations where it's like, do we get a cleaner? Do we outsource this stuff in today's crazy world? I'd kind of feel pretty bad if we did, but it's a genuine thought, because time, I think, is the hardest thing. And especially when you go back to building takes forever, having done it a few times. And it is hugely therapeutic, probably because of how much time you do spend on it. But to say yes to something, you got to say no to something else, and it's even, I can imagine, just even harder with kids, which is probably why I'm tapping into it as much as I can right now.
Yeah, well, the balance of that as well. Like we have a cleaner who comes once a week to clean for an hour or so. I find that time valuable, where I'd spend X amount of time cleaning, where I can spend X amount of time doing something else, be it something more constructive, be it work, be it hanging out with the kid, or doing something together. So managing those times and outsourcing things you don't really want to do, to find the time to do things you may want to do. And that could be doing yoga in the morning, or that could be building a cubby house. I think that's really important as well, to not be scared of actually outsourcing things to people who are better at it than you, because I certainly don't have the skill set to do X and Y. I can probably cook a lot of things, which is great. But yeah, if somebody said, can you build up a cubby, I'd be on the phone to my old man straight away and he said, listen, any chance of hand, mate? And he'd say yes, because that's what they do.
But see, clearly you don't have an ego, because I'd be like, I probably should build it myself. So I think there's that whole ego element that comes into it as well.
Do you ever think that, Kane? Do you ever think, wonder if one day the little kid comes to me and says, Dad, can you build this for me? Will you ever think, maybe I should be able to? Or do you really need to know how to build these kind of things? I mean, good in other areas. Is there a need for it?
Well, it's funny. Like I've grown up, and my dad was a carpenter, and my mum, because it was the generation, was a mum. She had a part-time job for a while, then we were at school, but when I was really little, she was a mum. So I grew up watching her cook stuff, and I grew up watching my dad build stuff. I think I've picked up a lot of the cooking stuff, but not so much of the building stuff for whatever reason that is. So it just happened to be, I probably have more interest in something which is a bit more practical on a day-to-day basis. To me, cooking is something which I need to do every day, where building is awesome. And the few times I do get to muck around with stuff, I enjoy it, but it's probably not as day-to-day practical for me to do.
It's definitely different with guys now doing, like, I probably do half the cooking here as well, just in that relationship situation, or maybe I'll give credit where credit's due, probably a third versus 2/3.
PK will be listening.
But exactly. But I can do it. It's tough to pick up the practical things, but especially in today's world, where, I mean, honestly, why do you need to cook? There's Uber Eats. Why do you need to build something? There's Airtasker. I mean, that's the other thing is, if you're constantly outsourcing everything, which I think outsourcing is really good, but does that set a bad example to kids? I don't know, but I'm interested in your thoughts having kids.
I think it could. I mean, you know, is the art of even changing a tyre, has that been lost with you know, ring up RACV or RACQ, whoever it might be? You know, do people need to be learning these things anymore? I grew up, I don't know about you boys, but I grew up in, you know, country Victoria, and out that way, a lot of the people around the area were either farmers or tradies, and they knew how to do, you know, all this kind of stuff, construction stuff. And, you know, the thought of, we'll use the Cubby house as an example, the thought of going somewhere else and buy a prefabbed Cubby house and just plonking it on the property was, you know, you wouldn't do that. That's embarrassing kind of thing. So I don't know whether that was sort of different for people who maybe grew up in the city or suburbia, but you know, you learn how to change tyres, you learn how to do all these kind of little tasks to get you through life. But these days, with so many, like you said, Ryan, with so many different options out there, is it even relevant anymore? I'm not too sure. What do you think about that?
I don't know, but they had it on, I think it was the Bachelor. Not that I want to definitely turn this podcast into a Bachelor podcast. It was either that or maybe Men's Health, a competition or something. But they genuinely had changing a tyre was a task for these fellas to do, as part of like proving the manlyhood or something like that. So I don't know whether it's lost. It's definitely good to know how to do it, but how relevant is it compared to today's world, especially being a guy? Like, yes, I can change a tire, mainly because for most of my adult life I drove a 99 Corolla that was a shitbox of a car. But like today, with the new car and sort of everything today, and living in the city, I turn around and go, would I even bother, or would I just call RACV? I don't know. So it's a tough one.
You know, the other thing is how do kids learn these things these days? Like everything seems to be self-served. You see kids in cafes looking at iPads all the time over breakfast and lunch and dinner and things like that. Like, where can they and where do they learn these sort of skills if these skills are important anyway? Like, I think it's good to be able to, like, obviously, you know, iron clothes, cook food, do some basic cleaning, at least know how to do them. And then if you want to choose to outsource them to do that. But where would kids learn a lot of these things these days? Like taught anywhere?
No,
it's only really through parents and family that anyone picks these up.
Well, has Google replaced parenting? I mean, I learned how to tile by watching a video series on Google for 3 weeks before I started doing it. So I don't know. Well, like you said, kids are already on iPads by the time they're sort of a couple of years old. Will the future just be that Google looks after it, which is pretty scary, to be honest. But yeah, unless you're making an active effort to go, you know, then I think even you building the Cubby house with your kids, Matty, is or building it in front of them is a pretty big statement in itself.
Well, they don't sit there and help, mate. They just sort of run the other way.
The thing with that is, like, kids learn by mimicking. So they'll see you do something and they'll mimic it, be it good mimicking, bad mimicking. They'll see you do that and they'll pick up bits and pieces from that. They'll go, okay, that's a hammer. This is what I do with a hammer. This is a saw. This is what I do with a saw.
Well, the middle child now is, you know, she'll pick up the drill and start pressing the buttons, and, you know, she knows what a hammer is. And I'll say to her, can you pass the measuring tape? And, you know, it's good that they sort of see that, even though the wife in the background is saying, stop pressing that drill. You know, it's nice for them to sort of learn what's what, and, you know, and that kind of stuff. Even if they don't use it later on in life, it's just good for them to get involved, I think, and, you know that this is how things are built sometimes.
Well, it's a good family
Yeah,
activity as well, Cubby house building. Like it's I remember Santa Claus built our Cubby house on Christmas Eve and it was magically up by Christmas morning. So Santa's pretty handy, but it's good that kids, it's a good family activity to actually build it together as well.
I should have got his number actually, and he could have done it.
I think you have to write to him every Christmas, Matthew.
That's what I'm doing wrong. Yeah, okay.
Matt, if you delay this long enough, you might even be able to write it off as a Christmas present. Just be like, look,
Well,
the
that's
Cubby
true,
house
yeah.
is built. just extend it a
2020.
bit longer. But I think that's a good point that you make there, because so the mate of mine that I'm building the furniture with, who's a chippy as well. We were in his warehouse, which is what we use, because obviously I'm not building recycled timber furniture in a high-rise apartment in Melbourne. So we're out in his warehouse, and I looked over at one of the boards, and it just looked like it had been hammered and nails everywhere and belted the crap out of it. And I was like, "What are you doing with this board?" And he turns around and he's got two boys, sort of 3 and 5, and he goes, "Oh, that's the kids' board." And it's literally just a couple of boards. They've got their own table, they've got their own tool set there, and they're just banging away and they're doing this. And he goes, "Yeah, it's good because I can pull them in on the weekend and dad can sort of do work whilst they're banging away and this kind of thing." And hey, at least they're learning how to use a hammer, whether they end up using it or not. It's sort of something there, and it's turned into a bit of a family activity, which is great. But yeah, it's sort of how do you integrate stuff as well?
I think society's even helping in little ways for what you mentioned there, Ryan. You know, Bunnings you'll often see will have, kids workshops where they can learn the fundamentals about banging some nails in or, screwing a screw in or that kind of thing. So I think which is great, so that they can actually go somewhere and learn these things. If, mum or dad doesn't have the capacity or isn't taking on any projects themselves, they still have an outlet where they can, learn these kind of things, which is nice.
Yeah, Bunnings as well obviously has the biggest kid magnet in the world as well. $2.50 sausages out the front. I swear to God, my kid knows where a sausage is from a kilometre away. He can just, that's kid magnets to get them in. And then once they're in there, they genuinely like walking around looking at stuff. They don't know what any of the stuff is, but they like pointing at, that, I've got to keep away from that, or that, I know what that is. I've no idea what that is. Oh, can I get that broom? And it's just it's that magnet to bring them in, and then they learn, again, just by being around different things.
Whoever invented that sausage sizzle at Bunnings seriously got a solid pay rise after that, because that is a massive lead magnet at that place.
It's actually quite funny. Like, I've gone past them before. They've got gluten-free sausages. I'm going, it's clearly, it's fine. It's a gluten-free sausage, but you're serving it in the widest of white bread possible, which can't possibly be gluten-free. Like, but yeah, it just draws people in. Like, you can smell. It's just the smell of the barbecue just wafting out over the suburbs, and everyone just piles in on a Saturday morning. Like, you can barely get a car park. It's insane.
Creating good memories though, mate, with your little one there. Trip to Bunnings.
It's his favourite meal at the moment. There's the 3 fail-safe meals, which is sausage and bread, gnocchi, and sushi. You always have to keep one meal ahead of kids. Dinner time, you got to have dinner ready at lunch. Always one meal ahead in case something goes bad.
Well, if
Nice
you
variety.
keep going to Bunnings so much, you'll have to start building your own cubby cave.
Yeah.
Or maybe it can be a granddad job, but plenty of Bunnings trips.
I'm already outsourcing lunch when I go there around lunchtime. So there's a $2.50 lunch, buddy. I'm done. So yeah, I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Or do your own sausage sizzle. Talking about outsourcing, do your own sausage sizzle in your backyard. Build over a couple of